And there's also here the 11-year-old girl assaulting employees from the store staff attempting to stop her. The group fled on foot, apprehended by police short time later. You know it's meaningless because there's nothing you can do because they're 11, but they'll be out the door, straight back into another, well, bashing or break and enter or whatever. Stealing cars at 11 years of age, for God's sake. Can you imagine the level of skills represented by an 11-year-old behind the wheel? And it just goes on. And no matter how much we talk about what needs to be done, nothing is done. Except, I've got to say, Geena Court came on a couple of days ago, and you thought that she's got that sort of energy and focus, and I'm hoping a lot of people take her lead. Get together. Every time we get together in bigger meetings, bigger crowds, we actually attract attention from far off Brisbane, where, relatively speaking, they don't give a stuff about us up here because that's our problem as they see it. But they're the ones with the key to addressing this nightmare that we're enduring every day and particularly every night. Now, just briefly, this is what it said in the Cairns Post today. A minor party candidate has outlined her stance on youth crime issues in the far north, offering solutions to the crowd of residents and declaring this isn't the Cairns that most of us knew and grew up in. Now, the real estate agent and Pauline Hanson's One Nation candidate, Cairns Geena Court, told a crime forum, this was at the showgrounds a couple of nights ago, of the effects of youth crime and what it was doing to the region, from impacting property investor confidence to making it feel like residents were, listen to this, the ones living in jail. We've become the ones living in jail with the number of security cameras, the bolted doors, and we heard about that yesterday from that victim. We think, oh, the bolted doors, that'll solve it. Look, these thieving little bastards are so clever, and they've got the equipment now. Even bolted doors are becoming feeble. Locked gates all around the city. Anyway, she shared with the forum stories from victims and their families, etc. Now, I've got to find her. There she is, One Nation candidate for the seat of Cairns. Geena Court's on the line. Hello, Geena.
Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm well. Talk to me about that meeting. Good. Talk to me about the response from people in the audience. What did they tell you and what did you learn?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing of the forums is getting the community feedback and finding out how they feel about the framework that we're presenting. And I simply asked the question, what do you think? We've had 3 or 4 forums now. The majority of feedback is fantastic, and people are really, really positive to the ideas that we have. There's been a few suggestions made by what we want to build in a riga, such as doing it in tents. We can't do it in tents because that includes tent pegs, it includes ropes, which are weapons, and also lack of security. But the feedback overall has been really, really positive.
I bet you hear a few horrible stories. I just had one in the last 24 hours from a friend too. When these creatures break in, they're just merciless. So many things were stolen with really strong personal meaning to the victims, and everything was just strewn around in the house. You know, really precious items were bundled obviously into a bag or whatever, things smashed, etc. And it would have had to been several runs from inside the house to what was probably a stolen vehicle. And broad daylight. This was in the suburbs, quite a busy suburb near the city yesterday. And you think, wouldn't people have noticed anything? Anyway, as it turns out, the police, I believe, have made a successful arrest, so there may be some better news. You would hope they'd be able to track down some of the stolen things. But this is happening every day in our city, almost in every suburb in our city, and lots of them are kids of 11 and 12 and 13.
John, we present 3 examples of serious crime, one that resulted in death, one that resulted in a gentleman being put in hospital for 6 days in a coma. That was where he woke up after they were attacked by about 20 with weapons. And the other one was the truth behind the stabbings that happened at Smithfield. Now, all 3 of them, not one person has done time at all. There's been there's sentencing, but one of those perpetrators who was involved in the stabbing, part of her sentence was to go back to school. And I fail to understand why they would send these violent people back into our schools as part of their sentence. But there's no consequences, John.
No.
There's none. We've sat in the courts. We sat in the courts and watched it. I've spoken to resi workers and care workers that are actually able to go into the children's court, and I've got reports from them. I mean, one of these kids said, the lawyer said, he's not up to it today because he's too tired. He didn't get any sleep last night.
No.
It gets worse. It gets worse. He didn't get any sleep last night, so they adjourned the case. When he came back to court, the reason he was tired that night was because he was out doing more crime, which at the next hearing, he was then sentenced for more crime that he committed. It's mind-blowing when you actually find out what's going in the court system. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what they do, I mean, we do have the police at the moment, and we did a live interview with these people from Bentley Park. We do have the police now recommending in some cases that they don't press charges. Now, our take on that and the reason for that is if these kids aren't getting sentenced, but the victims are pressing charges, then the perpetrators, these juveniles, are being let out and there will be retribution on these people.
Oh, no.
So it's a cycle. It's an absolute cycle. The police can't really keep people safe at the moment because they're seriously just not getting locked up.
Yeah.
So even if the police do their job, the judges aren't sentencing them to anywhere. And we rang the Cleveland Detention Centre. The majority of kids in Cleveland are Cairns kids, but it hasn't made a dent in anything here. No,
of course it hasn't. And the other point too, they've got to be practical in these matters. I mean, the number of Indigenous inmates in Cleveland now has gone from, I think, 91% to 93% in the last couple of years, nearly all of them. So is that taken into account? I mean, there would need to be at least an appreciation of the cultural aspects of this absolutely steepling population of Indigenous kids in Cleveland Centre. I mean, that's not even, it was only mentioned once, I think, in the Cairns Post, yet there needs to be an understanding of that, and there needs to be an effort to actually approach those families, find out what's wrong in those families, that those kids get out of Cleveland and they're straight back into the cycle of crime again. So is anyone taking any notice of this? Obviously not, because nothing's done about it.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people don't know that the Murray Court exists, and we've spent time with the Murray Court and we sat in the Murray Court to watch the proceedings. One of the girls has said to I believe it's the director of the Murray Court, that she was actually going through the Murray Court because she was looking for a lighter sentence and escaping jail time. It's a very, very softly approach. And in 2012, the government actually closed down the Murray Court, and in 2015, 2016, they opened it up again. But the reason that they did close it down was because it was ineffective. Now, if they are having an impact, we would be seeing a reduction in crime, and we're not. It's getting worse.
Do you know
yeah, you're right.
We elect people to sort these matters out. Geena, they never do. I don't know how they sleep at night, because obviously when they sit down to sort these matters out with other, I presume, fellow representatives, how the hell do they come up with the answer is, we'll change nothing, we'll do nothing? And yet we keep re-electing the same sort of people. How can we stop doing that?
Well, John, one of the responses that was given from an authority you're talking about, when talking about the stabbing victims, one of the responses he gave is, we pay magistrates and judges to exercise that role, but we don't want to go down the road of mandatory sentencing. We need to give judicial authorities wiggle room, but sometimes they just don't wiggle in the right direction. I can't imagine how that mother felt when her two daughters had been stabbed. She had a serious concussion where she was told not to use her brain until life became a little bit more routine again.
Oh, God.
And she's sitting there being told by someone that's supposed to protect her, it's all about the wiggle room. I would have been ropeable.
God. My God. Oh, it's heartbreaking.
They then there's about 5 people called a meeting with him and turned up for a meeting at his office. He actually called a negotiator in rather than sit down and talk to his community.
No.
So we definitely don't have any answers from the ones in charge, and adult crime, adult time is all good and well, but you cannot sentence a 10-year-old to a lifetime in prison.
No, we've got
And we don't have anywhere to send these kids anyway.
Yes. We've got to find people putting their hands up as representatives with some creative imagination and actually addressing the issue as it stands and giving us some answers, and then we've got to vote for them. I mean, some people just go into the booth and just tick the way they've always ticked for years, and they get exactly the same bloody result every time, and it just goes from appalling to disastrous. So we've just got to actually, please, if you're listening to this, just have a look at what's being offered as far as law and order is concerned in your local community. And if you're listening up here in far north Queensland, we're really copying it. So is Townsville, more than anybody else in the country. So please listen to people that are coming up with answers.
John, can I just make a suggestion? I know that we've had a complaint into the Cairns Post because they've contacted me about our call flutes where we're actually advertising the crime forums. Because the crime forum call flutes do not state we are one nation. I'm asking people, look beyond the politics of this. Even if I don't get elected, we need a solution put in place. We're putting it to the community to find out the community feedback and come up with a framework. Like we've done the hard yards for the last 9 months.
Yes.
I've been down to Operation Hard Yakka. I have spent time there. I'm giving an overview of what that is. And I've got a complete framework that includes the parents of these children. It includes remuneration for the victims. And it includes stopping the cycle. And we actually have we will have somewhere for these kids to be sent. So it takes them off our streets as well. All I'm asking the community, come along and have a listen, regardless of who gets elected at the end. If it's two majors, we're probably going to have exactly what we've got now. But at the end of the day, as a community, if we all of a sudden have 100,000 people standing together saying this is what we want, then they can't ignore us, regardless of the party. They can't ignore us. I'm asking people, yes, it has to be changed at a political level, which is why I'm standing up.
Yes.
Because it's easier to do on the inside than what it is from the outside. But I am happy to stand with the community, even if I don't get elected, and push this forward afterwards so that we have a solution. To be honest, I actually want to get a decent night's sleep. And I haven't had one for a long time because I think everybody sleeps with half an eye open these days.
Exactly.
This isn't the way we should be living, and I don't want to live like this anymore.
Really appreciate this contribution, Geena. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for the call. I appreciate it.
Geena Court is the One Nation candidate for the state seat of Cairns' upcoming election, October 5 to 11.